So I have the pleasure of sitting down with Natalie Kaminski.
By the time I left my father's home, I had $500 and 9 months to make it work. I became a QA engineer and then a project manager and a business analyst and a webmaster in the early 2000s. That opportunity gifted me the knowledge of running a software company.
Me as CEO visionary, I'm the one stunting our growth, getting in the way. I'm not waking up every day super passionate about it, which led me to sell my company.
If your agency is going to go out of business because AI can replace you, it means you've never had enough value to begin with. So the guy I met at the bar, he created all these connections for us. He put me in touch with this person, and then he disappeared. I ended up hiring the person he put me in touch with. This person, his name is Igor Alexandrov. He is now my co-founder and CTO. Thank God that Russia is such a country that you can solve anything with $500.
This is the unfiltered truth about entrepreneurship. Raw, no BS, no sugarcoating. Welcome to Entrepreneur Intel. I'm your host, Wes Matthews. Each episode, we'll learn from experienced founders and uncover the top 5% learnings that led to their success in all things personal, family, and business. This show is sponsored by Stealth Consulting, delivering clear marketing strategies, ROI, and no surprises. Well, I'm super excited today. So I have the pleasure of sitting down with Natalie Kaminski out of New York. I want to introduce you because there's a lot to unpack here. I don't even know where to start. I'm really excited at the conversation, but two-time immigrant arriving in the U.S. at the age of 18 with $500 to your name. Graduated cum laude from Northwestern University with 0 student loans while you're working full-time, raised 2 daughters. And probably the most thing I'm impressed with is that you just ran your first marathon at 44. I just turned 44. I golfed yesterday. I feel like I got beat up a little bit. So I want to dive into that and how you have all this time to do that. But Natalie, thank you so much for joining today on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Just one correction. I graduated from Northeastern, not Northwestern.
Northeastern, my
yes,
bad.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. We got an interesting backstory. So I'd love to start with, two-time immigrant. That's new to me. But give me a little bit of the backstory on where that all started from, where that originated. Then I want to slide right into how you became an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So I was born in the Soviet Union, the country that no longer exists. And I was born in the Russian part, all the way beyond the Arctic Circle in a city called Norilsk, which is the most populated city beyond the Arctic Circle. I mean, needless to say, it's a very sad place, I imagine. My parents were kind enough to move away from there before I turned 1. So I do not remember much, but I do remember that before we immigrated for the first time to Israel in 1990, my mother took me to Norilsk just for me to see my homeland, so to speak. And I remember it was either May or June, and the snow just began to thaw. So it's an interesting place, I'd say. So we immigrated to Israel 1990. It was a thing to do for many Jews. Jews have experienced a lot of discrimination and anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union, and so have my family. And in 1990 we had the opportunity to immigrate to Israel, and we we're glad to do that. So I grew up, kind of my formative years, my teenage years, etc., took place in Israel. An amazing place to grow up in. I really enjoyed my time there. I remember skipping school, going to the beach, tons of friends, lots of sunshine, great times. And then when I was just about to graduate high school in 1998, my father, who was mostly estranged from us by that time, he kind of showed up in my life again. He suggested to my mother that I joined him in the US. Because by that time he made his way from Russia, Moscow to Minneapolis, of all places. And, it was a great idea. He basically said, why don't you come, move here? You're still 18. You'll be able to, I'll put you through college. You'll have more opportunities here than you'll have in Israel. And I was not too excited about that option, but my mother was adamant. So I got on a plane and I moved to join my father and his family. Did not go too well, unfortunately. We really didn't see eye to eye on many things. Like we didn't really know each other. And so I only spent about 3 months trying to live with him, after which time I left. And I had $500 because my mother slipped it to me as I was, kind of getting through security at the airport. She's like, here, have some money on you. And I also had a return ticket with an open date good for 12 months. So by the time I left my father's home, I had $500 and 9 months to make it work.
Wow.
And, the rest, as they say, the rest is history. But I definitely take credit for a lot of this hard work I had to put in. But I also am eternally grateful to the people that kind of came across my path and helped me get to where I am today. Um, the What really helped me is that it was 1998, and if you remember, it was the year of the big Y2K issue. Everyone was getting ready to, for the world to fall apart because computers were supposed to stop working, and it was fairly easy to get a job in IT, and that's what I had done. I passed an interview. I claimed that I knew how to program, which honestly was a big load of no, nothing. And I worked really, really hard on my first project, which the project involved converting a database from a 2-digit year to a 4-digit year to accommodate, us moving on to the new era of 2000s. And I worked, honestly, I want to say like 14, 16-hour days just to get through that project because I did not know what I was doing. The internet wasn't like helpful. I literally had to go to library, you know, get
Yeah.
books, sit down. Like it was fun times.
Yeah, I was gonna say in my mind, we're so if you're 40, like iPhone didn't exist, Google really wasn't, there yet.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
yeah.
yeah. Like the only research or help like you could really get was from your peers and books, and then going to the library and kind of learning the hard way. And I did that for about 6 7 months. Proud to say that I accomplished my project assignment, and at that point I learned two things. I did not want to be a programmer, but I really wanted to stick in, with some sort of career in tech. And so I spent the next decade really working my way kind of through the various roles in the software development, right? I became a QA engineer, and then a project manager and a business analyst and a webmaster in the early 2000s. That was a very fancy title. Uh, yeah. And so I kind of worked through the ranks, so to speak, and I learned a lot on the job. And my last employment, I guess, was for a small company here in New York, uh, where I kind of took upon the leadership role. I was, the chief operating officer, which really meant everything in the company except for, like kind of support to the CEO and sales and project management and, and account relationship management, like basically everything. And so that opportunity gifted me um, the knowledge of running a software company. So now I had kind of the know-how of what it means to build software. And then now I've learned what it means to run a software company. And so in 2008, when we had a huge Lehman Brothers collapse, and the company I used to work for started, there's like lost a lot of clients, was really showing the signs of going under, I jumped the ship and I went on my own as a freelancer and never looked back.
How important, I mean, it's really interesting, I love that in the tech world, you climbed the ranks, you did a lot of different jobs, you became COO, and you really got a full was there just a moment for you that you're like, "Man, I could just do this better myself," or at what point were you like, "Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, like, I'm just learning, soaking this all in, and now I'm armed to go." Did you have an aha moment that kinda smack you in the face, or
I've always been a very ambitious person. Um, and I think I've always had an entrepreneurial streak to me, but it wasn't, but because I didn't have any like family financial support or anything like that, making money was always very important. And so to me, having stable income and, having the jobs I've had, like holding those positions and learning, allowed me to almost learn on somebody else's dime, go through, like understand how companies work, because I worked for small companies, for large corporations as well, and kind of give me the sense of what I wanted and what I did not want. I think I've always wanted to be my own boss. That's has always been, I think, from like my first job, not that I don't want to say I had issue with authority. No, but like I always wanted like the cloud, I always wanted to be the manager. I always wanted to be the leader in the team. I mean, I led my first development team when I was 22, and my team was comprised of 40-year-old man sitting around
Yeah.
the room taking kind of lead from me, which was, made me feel very good.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, no, that's really great. Because thinking about that now, do you feel you have a different perspective? I mean, you'd thrown out a lot of titles out there and a wealth of experience, working in small companies, and then also being the COO, right? So you're juggling sales, operations, finance, dealing with the crazy CEO. Now, as you sit at the head of your company, are you a little bit more empathetic of team members and their roles, or COO like that? That's got to give a really great perspective since you've
Oh,
been in those seats.
absolutely. And I'll tell you, some people say, "Oh, I wish I started my entrepreneurial journey earlier." I don't say that. I actually am very glad that I have a good amount of, like over a decade of experience before I decided to go out on my own, because it allowed me to develop that empathy, because it allowed me to understand people in different roles, because it gave me some real world knowledge and understanding of how, things work. Um, and now I can challenge some of those, assumptions. I can challenge some of those things that people do in business world. But I think having gained that experience has definitely made me a stronger leader today, for sure.
So when you finally broke away and started to freelance, and you kind of started that journey, what year is this?
2008.
2008. So fast forward, we're 2025. A lot's going on in the world. You have a vast experience in tech. Where did you end up landing in tech? Like, what was that? Hey, I'm a freelancer, but how did you gravitate towards where you're at now, which is JetRockets? What did you decide to take on, and why?
Well, frankly, it's all, since I've always been in tech and software. It's almost like I never knew anything else. This is what I know how to do. This is where I had the experience. This is where I had the connections. There was never a question in my mind as to like, what type of business am I going to build? It was almost like a given, right? So my freelancing had begun as a product manager to an investment firm that I met through some prior connections. So they hired me, they gave me a gig, they asked me to help them design a portfolio management system, which I had done. They really liked the result of the work. And then they said, "Oh, great. Can you build it for us?" And I said, "Of course I can." you know, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you got to say yes, right? That's
Right,
how you
right.
get things done. So I said, "Of course I can," and they said, "Okay, let's do it. Give us some budget, give us some timelines. Let's build this thing." And I went home. I remember, and I was like, "Oh my god! Well, this is real. This is happening. I gotta make this work." And so I went online and I started researching. Where can I find some potential programmers that I could hire? And then I remember same night I went to an event, a networking event in New York, right? So like again, putting yourself out there and going
Yeah.
places is also very, very important. So I'm at this event in New York and I kind of mingle with people. I'm speaking to someone and then I hear behind me, I hear a very distinct Russian accent. And so I turn around and there is this guy, and we started chatting, and I said hi, and he said hi, and I said, I hear you probably from Russia, and he said, yes, I just arrived, fresh off the boat, so to speak, and turned out, this is, I'm going to give you like his side, and then my side, and then what actually happened. So he's telling me the story about having this amazing development center filled with, engineers just waiting for new projects. And I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. And I'm telling him the story about all these clients I have lined up, that are just waiting to find a great team to get this stuff done. And so we're really, just making stuff up, talking to one. and then and then I said, okay, well, why don't you put me in touch with your team? I'd love to work with them. And so what he does, I go home the next morning, I get an email from him introducing me to one of his engineers. Well, here's a point of view of the engineer, who at that time was searching for freelance gigs at a site called Elance, which is now owned by, I guess, Upwork. So, like in the first
Yep.
iteration of Upwork. Um, so the guy I met at the bar sent an email to this random person on Elance saying, hey, I have a project. Are you interested? So like he created all these connections for us. He put me in touch with this person and then he disappeared. I've never heard from him again. But what it led to is that I ended up hiring the person he put me in touch with. This person, his name is Igor Alexandrov. He is now my co-founder and CTO. We've been working together ever since. We have become friends. July 4th, he just moved to the US. He settled in Atlanta. And, it's like a Cinderella story, really.
What's amazing, because if you rewind back, like if you weren't at that event, if your ears
Absolutely.
weren't perked up, I mean, I'm a big believer
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs. I think, most have really strong vision. And there was one time in my life where I bought a Jeep Wrangler, like a Jeep, right? And I'll never forget, I drove home with that Jeep and I told my wife, I'm like, first of all, there's a million Jeeps on the road. I never even noticed Jeeps before. And then everybody's waving to me. Like there's a weird Jeep thing that people wave to each other. But like until you put something in your brain and like your brain kind of subconsciously helps you find what you need. But like you bring up a lot of multiple points on there. One, like taking risks of just putting yourself out there because you also raise a couple girls. You got a lot going on. You got to go to an event. A lot of people are like, I work all day. I don't want to go out and meet new people. But that's really the backbone and how your company began was you putting yourself out there. So what's interesting with that? So okay, so you meet this individual. Now you guys are great business partners. So what now? Right? You have that one project. You've kind of cobblestone this thing together. Did the
Yes.
second phase of that go swimmingly as well?
It's you know how it is. It's like three steps forward, two steps
Yep.
back, kind of situation. So we did an amazing work with this first project, which led to another project, and then which led to an introduction and another introduction, and we kind of started growing from there. And we established, at some point we realized we can't work together, like just the two of us forever, obviously. So my co-founder had brought in another person from his university where he studied, and then we started hiring people. We had our first employee who worked, her name is Julia. She worked with us for 11 years, 12 years actually. 12 years she stayed with us, and we only parted ways about a year and a half ago because frankly it felt like we were preventing her from growth, and she was no longer a good match for our company, because like people outgrow each other, right? Like so.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a very amicable kind of, separation. Everything was fine. But this is just to demonstrate that we really, the company we were trying to build, when we realized that we were becoming a company, because at first it was just, a few people working together, building software products, making good living. That's what it was all about. It was never, oh, let me build a company, because building a company is a very different animal, right? So when we realized that we're actually building a company, the first question we had to ask ourselves is, what type of company do we want to be? And the answer was actually very, very simple. It was a company that we want to work for,
Interesting.
because all of us, like, we have three co-founders. Actually, it's myself, my CTO, and then we have a third person who, his name is Alexei. So it's three of us. We still, 16 years in, we still love what we do.
That's amazing.
Like I'm not one of those CEOs who just wants to, like, can't wait to exit, can't wait to replace myself with someone. I do not feel the burnout despite the many trials and tribulations we have gone through in those 16 years. I mean, to survive that long in consulting business, it's, not just to survive, to thrive, because, we're profitable. We've always been profitable. We've never had a non-profitable year.
How do you so for me, right, as a visionary, I love that. I want to dive into that because I did this thing called strategic coach. So Dan Sullivan, he talks about like keeping an entrepreneur visionary in their three uniques. It sounds like somehow, some way you fell into that. Like for you to be that motivated, like how did you how do you as a visionary running this company and you guys have over 50 employees, like you're a good sized company, right? How do you stay in that zone?
I think it's about knowing who you are and learning how to say no to things. You know, it's early on when we first started, we were like, if you have money, we'll do it for you.
Everything to everybody.
Exactly. As long
Yep.
as you're able to pay my bills, I am your person. Right. And then, I mean, it works for a very short period of time. And then it stops working because inevitably you end up taking on projects you cannot handle or you find extremely boring, unsatisfying, challenging, etc. Right. And so um, embracing who you are and what you do best, which for us at JetRockets, we are a Ruby on Rails shop. We always have been since our inception, and we have stuck with Ruby on Rails as the technology of choice ever since, and we love it. And my developers love working with it. We've built amazing products with it, and there is no need to pretend that we're not a Ruby on Rails shop. Although there was a period of time when we were like, maybe we should try other tech, and like, why not? And so sticking to doing what you do best and what drives your passion, I think is very important. I personally have found a lot of passion and satisfaction in helping non-tech founders, people who want to launch new products, who come from non-technical backgrounds and are not sure how to proceed, how to actually find themselves in this world. I love, like, I'm a mentor, I'm an advisor to multiple startups right now who have built with us and continue to work with us over time. So this is where I find my passion in. So like, as long as I can do this, right? Like, I'm excited. As long as I build products that I actually genuinely care about and learn from, I'm excited. Like, I, we probably could make more money by taking on everything and anything, but it's not, it wouldn't be as satisfactory as what we
It's
do.
great. No, I totally resonate with you. I mean, I my background, I come from web, like website design, SEO, paid search, and I woke up one day and I'm like, I hate this.
Mm,
Like my passion was zero, and I had a realization that me as CEO visionary, like I'm the one stunting our growth, getting in the way. I'm not waking up every day super passionate about it, which led me to sell my company. And I find it very interesting that, if you could be an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur and you're sitting in that seat and you're, really passionate about what you're doing. And my challenge was, and I'd love to get your feedback on this. My company was too big in the sense of I have this visualization of like it's a cruise ship. So I wanted to change direction. But like as captain of the cruise ship, I couldn't like spin that boat around. I had to just like sell the boat, and like go somewhere else and restart. Like you must like does any of that resonate with you or as you guys I mean with AI and software and there's companies out there now that will spin up your software idea in 45 seconds through ChatGPT. Like there's all this stuff out there now. How do you weed through all that?
First of all, let me, I'm going to break this into like three distinct answers. So, size wise, in 2022, the year between 2022 and 2023, we had experienced an explosive growth and we got to 87 people in the company. And I found myself setting a goal in my mind to get to 100 people. And in hindsight, like, there was no rhyme or reason for that. Like, it was
It's a nice
pure,
number. It's a nice round number.
it's a vanity goal. It's
Yep.
like, it sounded cool, ooh, I employ 100 people. Um, I completely ignored at that time. I got so greedy. I completely ignored our profit margins, the quality of work. We ended up losing a couple of clients because things had begun to slip through the cracks. I had not taken care of properly training my middle management because we grew too fast. And we made, like, I personally take the ownership of saying I made every mistake in the book of how not to grow that fast. Like, I've done everything I should not have done. I have learned my lesson. We, reduced our employee count to about, like you said, about 50 people, and it makes a world of difference. Our margins our profit margins have exploded again. Like, we're back to where it felt good to run this company. So first of all, yeah, there is such a thing as getting too big and not being comfortable with it. Now, again, I'm not saying you cannot grow sustainably and, slowly over time to get to, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people in a nice, sustainable manner. But listen, that's not us. That's not who we were set out to be. And that's okay. That's okay to just say, this is not us.
Yep.
So that's one. Second, yeah, I mean, there's so much noise. There's so much hype about things. I mean, new tech is coming out every day. I mean, we've gone through, again, I've been in this industry since 1998. We've gone through so many iterations of, oh, everybody got to do big data. Everybody got to do the cloud. Everybody got to, like every couple of years, we have this new explosion where things say, oh, everybody's going to lose their jobs unless they do X, Y, and Z. Right. And so now it's AI. And look, I love AI. We embrace AI. We use AI every day in our work. Right. And I'm talking about AI assisted development, meaning all of our employees, all of our developers are utilizing AI coding assistance, But the truth be told, and this is what, you read online that anyone with no tech, no engineering knowledge can just like spin up an app. You can. You absolutely can spin up a proof of concept. But if you want to scale, if you want to make sure your app is secure, if you want to make sure, you can actually service your clients, then you can't. Not quite. You know, my engineers, my good engineers, strong engineers, have gotten about 30 to 40% efficiency improvement, and that's amazing. And that's why we love AI. We can do more things with less people. Absolutely, we can. And, these code assistants are allowing my engineers to focus on the interesting tasks instead of, for example, writing tests for their code, right? Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
So no doubt AI is making our job so much better, so much faster, so much more interesting. And we can, solve real problems now instead of being stuck with like trying to, like I said, write code or create crude methods and, whatnot. At the same time, I believe that if your agency or your company, whatever, is going to go out of business because AI can replace you, that means you've never had enough value to begin with.
Interesting.
I mean, because I don't sell, like JetRockets doesn't sell lines of code. We don't sell syntax. We sell, what we offer to our clients is long-term partnership in building, maintaining, sustaining their products. Products that, are secure, are scalable, are delightful to their users, that allow them to become, profitable over time. And product development and coding are two different animals. Like, coding has been quote unquote cheap for a very long time. I mean, you could hire a coder, for $15 an hour if you wanted to.
Yep.
Coding skills is the least of what we do. It's the engineering, it's the architecture, it's the thinking of how to build a platform that will not, expose all of your information to the world, like just happened a couple of weeks ago, right? With this T app. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Oh,
yeah, right. Engineers make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep. No, it's really interesting perspective because I feel like AI is here, it's moving along, it's going to do its thing, but you can't replicate or replace relationships. But I feel, does it create a new headwind for businesses, right? That say, the architecture is now easier. I'm just going to wing it and do it myself and find these $15 an hour people. Like, I always feel like there's a level of clientele, and I feel like that's the headwind that's coming. It gives this false sense of, it's something more than it really is. Um, But no, that's interesting. It's interesting that you can reflect back, and even in a couple years, it'd be like, "Hey, I really screwed this up," and there's a lot of learning. But with that, I mean, there's a big part in here that you relocated your entire workforce from Russia to Georgia.
Yes, yes,
Like
yes.
what? Yeah,
That
how,
happened.
like how were you prepared, not prepared as CEO, and what was going on during that time?
Oh well, not prepared at all. I mean, before the war started. So I remember January. Actually, that's an interesting anecdote. So like, I remember December 2021. We were thinking about organizing an offsite, for our employees. And we were thinking, oh, that would be cool to go somewhere, maybe Turkey, maybe, someplace warm. Wouldn't that be fun? And then, fast forward 2 months later, Russia attacks Ukraine, the war begins, and we're like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? Well, for two reasons. First of all, I'm Ukrainian. I spent my early childhood in Ukraine, although, like I mentioned, I was born in Russia, but like ended up in Ukraine before moving to Israel. But also, I think it's pretty obvious who's the bad guy in this war and who's the good guy. And, you know, I wanted to do nothing, like nothing that would even remotely support this war. Meaning, I did not want to send any money to my Russian employees because I didn't want them to pay tax in that country, to spend their money in that economy, etc. So I said, look, our only way to continue working is if everyone is just going to get up and move, and then we like reestablish our new lives, right? And so at that time we had 55 employees. About 45, give or take 43 people have immediately said, yes, we're going. And then the ones that decided to stay behind, they were given generous, like a few months to find a job, and kind of we parted ways. And, we didn't fire anyone overnight. We're like, okay, we understand, whatever. Like, you can't move, it's fine, stay, but you have to find a new job. So, and then the first thing we did was we really wanted to end up in a NATO country. So we started looking into Turkey. So, be careful what you wish for, right? Like I said, we wanted to do an offsite in Turkey, and suddenly we're moving everyone to Turkey. uh, and why Turkey is because at that time, Turkey was the only country that Russia had aviation, like was allowed to fly into, right?
Okay.
Because they grounded all the flights, like there was no flight communication between Russia and any of the other countries, and still isn't, by the way,
Wow.
right? With the exception of just very few countries. And so we said, okay, we'll go to Turkey. Turkey is, NATO country, meaning Russia will probably not attack Turkey, although who knows. And so we started looking into establishing our presence in Turkey. It turned out to be a lot more complicated than we had imagined. There are certain rules that require you to hire a certain number of Turkish citizens per each foreign employee, etc. And that just became very logistically difficult for us. And so the next best bet, we said, oh, well, there's Georgia. And literally, that's what happened, because we flew over some people to Turkey. Then we hired a huge van, and we started to just like move people to Georgia, because there's like a border between Turkey and Georgia. Right. So, and I remember it was March 2022. So the weather was, it was kind of on the colder side, but also very wet. And they ended up arriving in Batumi, which is a coastal city in Georgia. And it's a beautiful, kind of resort city. But in March, it's almost abandoned, right? And it was a little bit snowy and a little bit wet and cold. And we were trying to find accommodations. And the only thing, and we were, we found some realtor who had promised to find us like a big house that we could rent for everyone at that time.
Hmm.
But then apparently he just took us our money and disappeared. So like that happened. So my CTO was literally walking from one hotel to another hotel, like on the strip. There's like a strip, looking for a temporarily housing solution for like, all of our employees. And we ended up renting out like an empty hotel and, housing everyone there for the first like month or so. And then started renting Airbnbs for everyone, to give people their own place and kind of sponsored that for the first couple of months. So like, I'll tell you, it cost the company a lot of money, like about $250,000. Not count. Well, also remember we had to shut down our office in Russia. We had to uh, rent a new space in Batumi in Georgia. We built out a new beautiful office. We wanted to buy some furniture, and then we realized that there was no IKEA in Georgia. And like, where do you buy furniture for an office, right? You go to IKEA or like to a place similar to IKEA. And Georgia apparently has neither. And so we ended up moving our furniture from Russia to Georgia in a big truck. And thank God that Russia is such a country that you can solve anything with $500. Because at the border, they didn't want the driver to let them go through. So they just paid like $500 to let them
That's
through.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
it was quite an ordeal because I'll tell you, like, I was in New York. Like, imagine this. Like, I'm sitting in New York, in my office in New York, and I'm trying to arrange flights, Airbnbs, hotels, furniture. Like, all at once, while still running all of our projects, while still maintaining all of the client relationship. And I got to give it to my employees. They were phenomenal. They managed to keep all of their deadlines. They managed to help one another during the move. They managed to somehow not, screw anything up. That was amazing.
The best part is like not a lot of people, nobody sees that. Like they see software. Like what
Yeah.
actually goes into running a software company? And by the way, there was this thing called COVID that you were probably dealing with the tail end of that on top of it a
Oh,
little bit.
well, I got to say, COVID was good times for companies like mine.
Yeah.
The first couple of months were tough because nobody knew like what's happening. And so we had a lot of our clients put pause on projects or like scale down work, etc. So we took a bit of a hit early on. But I think the moment that people had realized that, oh, well, there's all this money now available and we're all going remote. So let's build all these platforms. That COVID was actually really good for us.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
that's great. I appreciate you sharing that because it's part of the entrepreneurial journey that people just don't see. And here you are, the CEO of this really successful software company, but you're navigating Airbnbs and moving stuff from Russia to Georgia,
Oh,
paying
yeah.
off paying off gangsters or police. That's awesome. So in the software world, like and you guys are a Ruby on Rails shop.
Yes.
What's keeping your interest today? Like what's that one thing you're working on that just jazzes you up?
Well, I mean, because we don't have any industry specialization, as in, our clients fall into a variety of different like niches. Every project is an opportunity to learn something new. Like clearly, I mean, obviously, like the past 6 months or so has been very AI heavy. And I'm not talking about just generative AI, like or ChatGPT wrappers, like many people do.
Yeah.
But we've done a lot of interesting stuff with customized LLMs and like sort of like decision making and coaching through LLMs and such. And that is actually pretty interesting. Learning how to work with the LLMs in the way that you learn to prevent hallucinations, learn to manage memory, and like a lot of like technical stuff that you got to do in order to understand how it works. Which, once you dive into it, you understand that there's no such thing as of right now as intelligence. In AI,
Yeah.
in my opinion, there's no intelligence. There's pattern recognition. And that's what people are failing to see. And I'm sure somewhere behind the scenes at OpenAI headquarters, they're doing a lot of real intelligence with AI. But most tools that are available to us today, they're amazing pattern recognizing software.
Interesting. Now you guys are working on something. Is it PTO related? Can you clarify that for me, or like what's
Yes,
that?
absolutely. So we, running a global company, and when I say global, means that we have employees all over the world now because, after we've relocated everyone to Georgia, almost 3.5 years, almost 4 years have gone by right now with the war. Many people have decided to continue their journey of relocation. They moved on to different countries. So we actually have people, like right now, we have people in Brazil, we have people in Europe, we have people in Asia. Like our employee staff is like literally global. And one thing that we found early on is that we had trouble maintaining our effective leave or PTO, paid time off, tracking and management. Like people, that there wasn't like a good centralized system for people to know how much time they have, how much time they've used up, how to schedule vacations, how to make sure that vacation time doesn't overlap with their teammates, and so on and so forth. And so we looked into some of the platforms available in the market, and we realized two things. They were either very, very expensive for a small company like ours, or they were not flexible enough to actually allow for different statutory rules and regulations around the world, or to create multiple vacation policies that perhaps apply to different people, right? And so we decided to build our own because, we're a software development company, so why shouldn't we solve our own problem? And we have, and we battle tested it for 3 years. And I love that product. I don't know how to run, effective PTO management without OneTribe. But I'm happy to say that a few weeks ago, we've actually made it available to the world. So it's called OneTribe.team. And anyone now can sign up for, a very affordable, very efficient, and very flexible leave management platform. OneTribe.team.
Nice. No, it sounds really interesting. Now, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with your story. I appreciate just your candidness and openness to share, because it's really helpful, I think, anybody throughout any journey. And here you are 15 years into your journey, and these big things are happening 2 years ago, right? And you're still learning, still motivated. So if anybody out there wants to connect with you to talk shop as an entrepreneur, or even like software development, what's the easiest, best way people get in contact with you?
My email is natalie@JetRockets.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Natalie Kaminski. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, and so I'd be happy to chat with anyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate the share. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Intel. Thank you for joining us. For show notes or other episodes, please visit us at entrepreneurintel.com. Until next time.